Hi everyone, this is Tom, and in this video, I want to talk about how to turn your studying, your revision, your learning for your whatever kind of course you're doing into a game, and particularly a kind of addictive game that makes you want to do more studying. And this is something that I've managed to figure out even as far back as my A levels and then implement it throughout university and my postgraduate exams. And it really helps me to stay motivated. Ultimately, studying can be quite boring. And if you're just, passively going into the library, getting out some books, copying out some notes, it's very understimulating. And you'll probably find that your attention is drifting, you're losing interest in things, and you don't really feel that motivated to study. Whereas if you can kind of gamify it and turn it into an addictive game that makes you want to keep going back and doing more studying and improving your skills, improving your scores, and seeing progress over time, that can really make you kind of excited to go and study. And that's what this video is all about. So how do I implement strategies to turn studying into a game? And there's been times over the course of my many years of studying for exams where I've not turned it into a game. I've tried different strategies that don't have a kind of game-like approach to them, and I've done much worse in those exams, even if I've worked harder. So having a kind of game-like strategy really helps. So I want to start by just going through some basic benefits to doing this, like approaching it as though it's a game. And sometimes there can be this feeling that if you're having fun, if you're enjoying it, it can't really be effective. You're not supposed to enjoy studying. You're not supposed to get kind of like a buzz and a reward, a dopamine kind of reward from studying. But that's not true. In fact, it's actually better to approach it this way in terms of how much you learn, how much you recall, how well you do in your exams. So first benefit is it's fun and engaging. So if you implement these strategies, studying will become more fun. Ultimately, if something is more fun, you'll do more of it. And that way, if you do more of something, if you just do more repetitions, more practice, you'll get better at it. So the more fun it is and the more engaging it is, the more you'll do of it and the more you get out of it. Secondly, these strategies are actually more effective. So when something is like a game, what happens is your brain switches on and your brain kind of subconsciously says, I need to pay attention to this. I'm going to get tested. I'm going to get, there's going to be some kind of challenge here. I need to really focus. If you're just passively copying out notes, your brain says, well, this is a very low intensity activity. There's no kind of test here. There's no challenge here. There's no fun here. I'm going to switch off. So by engaging your brain and really challenging it, that makes learning way more effective. Thirdly is more efficient. So the game-like strategies, which we'll go through, and I'll talk about how you turn things into a game, makes it more efficient. You don't want to be spending 12 hours a day studying in the library or coffee shops or at home or wherever you like to study. You don't want to be spending many, many hours doing it. You want short, focused, intense, challenging, fun study sessions that last you, say, 1 or 3 hours, and then you move on and do something else with your day. That's more efficient. You spend less time studying, but you also get much more out of your studying. Number 4 is it's more strategic. What do I mean by this? Well, I mean that you have a clear strategy, a clear kind of mission, the way you're going to approach your semester or your term. And by having this clear vision of how you're going to attack the studying that you need to do, because you have a clear strategy, you're much more likely to do well in your exams, cover everything, and basically get through the semester much easier. If you kind of don't have a clear strategy, you don't have a game, you haven't set something for yourself in terms of exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to test yourself, you're just going to be approaching it in a kind of non-strategic way that's going to leave big gaps in your knowledge. You're not going to cover everything, and you're not going to feel motivated along the way. And finally, it's more complete. So by approaching it this way, you're going to want to, you imagine this like a game, say this is Mario, and you want to collect all the coins, you want to kill all the baddies, you want to, tick off everything on your checklist. And that gives you a sense of satisfaction from completing everything. And if you approach it correctly, you'll make sure you cover everything, and you do it in a game-like way where you really tick off all the boxes. And then that means you're much more likely to cover the whole syllabus, and there won't be big gaps in your knowledge when it comes to the exams. So let's look at the principles. So we've gone through the benefits. Now let's look at exactly what we're going to do and the principles that we're going to implement to make studying more like a game. Firstly, we need just the right amount of challenge. So when you sit down to study, it should be challenging. It should be difficult. You should be suspicious if it's too easy. If you sit down and you're kind of getting bored and it's not stimulating you enough, if you're not kind of struggling, if you can listen to music and hold a conversation at the same time, studying is not challenging enough. Firstly, that's less fun. And secondly, that's way less effective. If you go into the library and you're with a group of friends and you're kind of half texting, you're half talking to your friends, you're kind of eating at the same time, you're listening to music, and you're supposedly studying at the same time, this is not going to help you learn. It's going to take up way more time, and it's not going to be as stimulating and rewarding as something challenging. Every time I do a study session, I am pushing my brain to the point where, I can't do anything else. I have to just do that study session. There's no, chatting to friends. There's no texting, because my brain is really being used to its maximum capacity. So we can kind of illustrate this. So you imagine this circle. You're in the middle of the circle, and you're stretching your capacity of your brain as you go further out from this circle. So in the middle is too easy. So this is your kind of comfort zone where you can sit down, chat, drink coffee, text people, scroll on social media, and do a bit of studying at the same time. Music's in. You can do this for like 12 hours a day. This is not going to help you progress towards your exams. The next circle is challenging. And this is the zone where you're really making progress, you're really learning stuff. And also you should feel stimulated. And you may have come across this term, which is that you're in a state of flow. And I was looking back at some pictures of me over the years. I was just with my wife looking at photos from years gone past. And there's quite a few photos that she's taken of me studying. And I look like I'm just in a completely different world. I'm kind of like really focused on what I'm doing. And when I'm in that kind of zone, nothing in the outside world is going to distract me. She struggled to get my attention. And if you're in that zone and you get interrupted, it feels painful. You get ripped out of that kind of state of deep work and deep flow, and then it takes ages to get back into it. If you're able to just multitask, flick flip back and forward between activities, conversations, and things, you're not in that zone. And this is where it's going to be too easy. You're not going to get the same benefits in terms of that reward system and that feeling of making progress. And also your studying is just not going to be as effective. And then, of course, there's an outside zone, which is too hard. And if I was to say, go and do a course on, or try and read a book on sort of rocket engineering or something, that would just be too hard. So you've got to find this this point that's just the right amount of challenge and work at that level. So you always want to be here when you're studying. If it's too easy or it's too hard, you need to revisit the strategy and figure something out. So it should be challenging to the point where you can only do, say, 3-4 hours a day maximum of this kind of work. And that's that's where you get the most growth in terms of your studying, but also the most reward and the most kind of feeling like you've had the right challenge. You wouldn't want to play a video game that's just too easy or one that's just impossibly hard. You want the right amount of challenge. So, second principle is you want constant feedback. Ideally, immediate feedback. I don't mean immediate as in within the next few seconds, but within that study session. You don't want feedback 3 weeks later on that study session. You want feedback within the study session. So that looks like this. You study, and by study, I don't just mean read. I don't just mean watch videos. I don't mean listen to podcasts. We'll talk about just in a second what studying means. But you study, then you get feedback. So you learn, you get feedback in terms of, did you actually learn that thing? Have you retained that information? Can you put that information into practice in a way that reflects your exams? So for me in medicine, that was often multiple choice question exams. When I did my psychology degree, that was essay exams. And there could be other things, like if you've got maths exams, it could be solving maths problems, like when I did my maths A level. There could be potentially other type of exams as well. And you want to get feedback on the way you would perform that exam specific task. The same is true if you're learning, say, guitar or a foreign language or something like that. The feedback, you should implement some guitar practice with feedback on your guitar practice or language practice. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So you study, you get feedback, and then you reflect on that feedback. And ideally record it as well. So you keep a kind of score. And then you learn. And you study again. So you've got this constant cycle. You're doing something, getting feedback, reflecting on it, learning, doing something, getting feedback. And this feedback cycle and this cycle of kind of reflection and learning is really how you make progress. It's also very rewarding because let's say you're anything that really gives you a lot of immediate feedback becomes quite addictive. So for me, practicing shooting basketball is very addictive. So I love going to a basketball court, shooting a basketball, watching it go through the net, watching it get a bit short, bit far, bit to the left, bit to the right. And that immediate feedback of good shot, bad shot, good shot, and constantly reflecting and getting better and doing that over and over again becomes really addictive. The same is true for studying. You study through a topic, do some questions, you feel the knowledge sinking into your brain through the kind of feedback cycle, and you do the practice questions and get feedback to say, yeah, it actually sunk in and you did better on those scores than last time. Kind of becomes addictive. So I like to implement something called the testing sandwich for this to give you loads of feedback. So the testing sandwich starts, so you sit down for your study session, and I've got a whole video on the testing sandwich. You can watch me do it, but you sit down for the study session, and the first thing you do is short answer questions. So you're going in cold. Say you're studying cardiology. You're going in cold. You haven't done any studying today. This is the first thing you do when you sit down to study, is a bunch of short answer questions. Immediately on those short answer questions, you're getting feedback. Immediate feedback. You don't know this. You don't know this. You know this. You know this. You don't know this, as you go through those questions. And that's great. That makes you immediately either excited about the ones you're getting right, or excited about filling in those gaps in your knowledge for the ones that you're getting wrong. Then you actually do your scores for the short answer question. So you get a score from it, which tells you your current level of knowledge. So this could say your current level of knowledge of cardiology is 40%. That's great. You've got a score, you've got that feedback, and you've got something to work on to try and improve it. If this is the second time you're going through cardiology, the first time you did it, your score might have been 20%, and your score now is 60%. That's cool. You see your progress. You can actually see I went from 20% last time, and this is 2 weeks later, I'm doing it again, and I've got 60% this time. I'm learning stuff. I'm retaining information. And that feedback is exciting. And then you think, okay, in another month, I'm going to do these again, and I want to get 80%. So there's some incentive that you're building in. Your brain becomes excited. There's a challenge here. I want to improve things. I can see some progress. And so that gets you kind of pumped up, and it's like doing a game. Then you do read and recall. And you may have watched my full video on read and recall. But again, this is like a game. So before you even read through the topic, you're trying to free recall everything you can remember about that topic without even looking at the book. So you're sitting down and scribbling the stuff you can remember from memory. And that's like a game. It's a challenge. It's forcing your brain to dig up what it already knows. And it's quite rewarding if you can remember stuff. It's exciting. If you can't remember stuff, it's like a challenge. Okay, now I need to, when I go through this content, I know that I didn't remember this. I need to remember it. And then as you're reading through, you read through, and later on you cover it back up and you try and recall what you just read through from knowledge. And that could be details like, say drug doses, or numbers, or dates, or words, or people, or names, whatever. Or it could be concepts where you've got a concept that you're trying to get your head around, say how the blood flows through the heart. And you sit down and you map out, you just scribble out that concept, or as though you're trying to explain it to somebody. So you're reading and you're recalling, and each time you recall, it's like a test, it's like a challenge, and that challenge kind of spurs you on. And then if you make a mistake, you have this kind of incentive to go back, find out the answer, then try and do it again, and this time succeed. So you're always like pushing yourself, pushing your boundaries, and trying to gain more information. Then the final thing of the testing sandwich, so this is all in one study session, is some kind of exam practice. So you've done your short answer questions, you've done your read and recall, and now you're going to practice putting that information into an exam setting. So this could be, for medicine, it's usually multiple choice questions. So you do some multiple choice questions, and you record your score for those multiple choice questions. So you're putting that information into practice, again, recording your score, and it's exciting because you have a score. You want to know well you've done during that study session. You want to know where you stand. Or it could be a practice essay, or it could be like a maths problem, a series of maths problems you need to solve, or accounting problems, or engineering problems. Or if you're learning a foreign language, you set yourself a challenge to put together some sentences, vocabulary test. If you're learning an instrument, it could be to play that song through. So you're doing something that replicates your exam and practicing that and putting what you've just learned into action. And importantly, you record your score here as well. Okay, so on to the next thing. The next aspect is you want to see progress. And this is rewarding. So you need to track your progress over time. So you could think of this if you're playing a video game, you're doing levels and you're seeing all these levels get complete. And that's very rewarding, and you're seeing your sort of character's level, their abilities, improving, whatever kind of thing you're collecting. You're seeing that increase, so number of coins you're collecting, number of hearts, whatever that stat is. The same you need to apply to studying. So you need to be able to see your progress. So you want to visualize the progress over time. You want to see the work that you've done. And traditionally, I think the way people tried to achieve this was that they made a pretty set of notes. So they took a textbook, copied that textbook into a pretty set of notes, and then they had their notes to show for it. And having the notes to show for it made them feel they've made some sort of progress. They haven't, because all that they've got now is a pretty set of notes. They don't have it stored in their brain. What matters for your exams is what's stored in your brain. And this way of tracking and this way of gamifying it, you see progress. You don't need to have an external sort of set of notes to show your progress. You see the progress of what's actually in your brain, not just what's you've produced kind of through some passive note taking. And you also want to see your scores going up. So you want to see your scores increasing. So how do we track this? We've got two options for this. One is a tracking table, and you'll have seen videos that I've done where I've talked about a tracking table. But essentially, the tracking table looks like this. And you have, on one side, you have your topic, or you could call it your mission. So this is what the topic is, for example, cardiology, but for maths, for example, it could be algebra, linear equations, things like that. And but for medicine, it would be like cardiology, endocrinology, renal, or it could be the anatomy of the heart, the anatomy of the muscular system, the anatomy of the nervous system, or it could be physiology of the heart, physiology of the liver, physiology of the GI system. So you break it down into topics. So here we can say cardiology, renal, gastro, etc. And then this is review 1, this is review 2, review 3, and so on. So what you're doing here is you're recording. Say you sit down for a study session. Each box here is a study session. And inside that box, you put the date, you put how would you rate your confidence? So easy, medium, hard, low, medium, high confidence. And then you put your short answer question score from the testing sandwich, and then you do your exam practice score. So for medicine, that would be your multiple choice question score. If you're doing an essay, you would have to kind of self-assess that essay and give yourself a score on the essay. And so you fill in the box. So this box would look like that. So when you first go through a topic, you fill in that box, and then you do renal, fill in that box, gastro, fill in that box. And these are like one day after the other. So Monday you might do cardio, Tuesday you might do renal, Wednesday you might do gastro. And then you work your way through all the topics. When you've done the first review of all the topics, then you move on to the second review, and then the third review, and focusing on the weakest areas. And what happens over time, as you go through the semester, is you see this tracking table fill in. So this is like seeing a progress bar in a video game where you're seeing your progress, you're seeing all the work that you've done, and you'll see these scores will start to go up. So when you first start your first review, you might say, oh my gosh, I'm scoring 30% on the short answer questions, 50% on the practice multiple choice questions at the end. And you think, gosh, I'm so far from my exam, I'm going to fail. People have these doubts. Whereas with this strategy, I would say that's kind of exciting because you see all the progress that you can make, and then you become addicted to it. So you say, I really want to get back, do another cardio session, and I want to improve my scores. And then what happens is you see the scores improve with each study session. So the second time your scores are like 30% higher, and that's exciting. Your confidence has gone up. You're getting better at cardiology. And then by the time you do the third one, your exam scores are really high. And then by the time you go into your exam, I have done so much progress on this. I've got my scores really high. I've attacked all my weak areas. I've, been through so many feedback cycles. I'm going to smash this exam. And then you do. Then you score really, really high in whatever exam you're doing. So by seeing your progress and getting that reward of the progression and seeing all the work you've done and filling in this tracking table, it becomes kind of addictive, and you want to do more study sessions. You want to improve your scores. And you become sort of very motivated about it. Okay, on to the next thing, which is point number 4, is that in order to make it more like a game and more fun and actually more effective, you need to add some time pressure. And one of the problems if you have a lot of open time is that you never get the effective stuff done. You almost need to have some time pressure to force you into taking action and doing the work. And anytime I've kind of set aside a specific block of time and known that that's the only time I have to get something done, that really forces me to take action and get the thing done. If I get up in the morning and think, oh, I've got a completely free, open day to do loads and loads of stuff, what will happen? Nothing. If I get up and I've got a very specific task I need to get done, and I need to get it done in this time period, it actually gets done. So they say, if you want to get something done, give that job to a busy person, because they'll actually make sure it gets done. If you give it to someone who's not busy, they'll, they've got so much time in the world that they never actually get the thing done. So a few things here. Set a time for your study sessions, or we could say your missions. So let's say your mission today is to do a study session on cardiology. Set a time for that. So it's like, okay, I'm going to get straight to the library, immediately get started, and I'm going to block off 3 hours to get that done. And set some kind of alarm to end it. So your goal is to complete this mission within this set period of time. You don't want to go over that time. because that kind of gives you a way of relaxing. It gives you a way of kind of procrastinating. You need that time pressure to really focus your mind. And actually, there's something fun about almost like, speed running your study sessions, forcing yourself to get it done. It's more motivating. There's something called Parkinson's law. And this states that work will expand to fill the time that's allotted to it. So if you set yourself 3 hours to do a task, you'll get it done in 3 hours. If you set yourself 3 weeks, that same task will take you 3 weeks to get done. So you need to set yourself a specific time. The way I do that, and the thing that's the one productivity app that I would recommend and has completely changed my working, is something called Forest. And every time I sit down to do some work, so even now with this recording this video, I've set myself a specific time and a specific goal on the Forest app, and push myself to actually get it all done within that time. And that app actually records how much time you spend over the course of a day, a week, a month. And so what you can do is try and increase the number of hours that you're setting aside to working or studying, and try and improve that number over time. So again, that's like a game to try and get you to do more work. I'll make a whole video about that app at some point, but that really has made a big change. And this time pressure really keeps you focused. And what you can actually do, you could record the time it takes you to go through that topic and try and improve that time over time. This also stops you from getting stuck. So if you are going through something for the first or second time, there may be some concepts that you don't quite click straight away, and you could spend hours just going round in circles on these concepts. And actually, what's better to do is try your best to understand them, spend a bit of time trying to understand them, maybe asking like ChatGPT or Grok to explain them a bit more to you, looking at different resources to try and work out this concept. But if you're still struggling and it's starting to take a long time, you need to move on, because what will happen is then in the gap between your first and your second, or your second and your third study session, your brain will subconsciously process it. And then when you come back to it in a few weeks, it'll make so much more sense. So you don't want to get stuck on something, and this time pressure helps to keep you on track. Okay, number 5 is to compete. So add some competition with friends. And this is very much friendly competition. You're not competing in a kind of cutthroat way, but it's kind of a fun way to create even more of a game kind of situation with studying. So the way you can compete with friends is if you match your resources and questions. So if you share your external database, the resources you use, so you're all using the Zero to Finals textbook, you're all using the Zero to Finals question bank, that way you're matching, and then you have the same kind of tracking table. So you would match your tracking table, and you can use the Zero to Finals member site for a really cool tracking resource that does the same thing as well. But say you're matching your tracking resource, you can compare tracking resources and become a bit competitive about it. So say I want to boost my scores beyond like my friend Steve's, for example. I want to complete more repetitions than that person. And that kind of friendly competition pushes you to do more than you would otherwise do if you were just on your own. And that's very much harmless, and kind of it will only serve to help everybody. because you'll both be competing. That will raise the bar for everybody. Everybody will be working harder. It'll be more fun, more exciting. You get some bragging rights. There's kind of a scoreboard or a leaderboard. And so it's a win-win-win for everything. Number 6 is just really the final thing, really, is to just shift your. Let's start again. Shift your mindset to a game mindset. So really, this is just taking a whole mindset shift away from, this is some kind of big exam, and I have to do this boring study stuff. I shouldn't be enjoying it. It should be a bit of a chore. Studying is more boring than playing video games or watching movies or going out with friends or playing sports. And shifting your mindset to, how can I turn this studying into a game where I get feedback, I have challenge, I see progress over time, there's some friendly competition, and looking for the ways in which you can turn this into a game and challenge yourself and look for ways to make it more kind of addictive, exciting, and make yourself want to study. So I hope this video has been helpful. That's the end of the video. If you want these kind of notes that I've been making as a really nice set of notes that you can refer back to if you don't want to watch this 30 or 40-minute video again, you can find them. There's a link in the description. You'll need a Patreon membership. But that Patreon membership also gives you access to these videos a bit early, plus the full members site. And if you're studying medicine, this is the perfect resource to turning your studying of medicine into a game where you've got questions, a fact trainer tool, which is a bit like Anki, and an OSCE practice tool and a tracking tool so that you can see your progress and track your progress over time. And I'll see you in the next video, which will be tomorrow.